Okay, all right.
Yes? No.
Okay.
I never heard of it.
Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. And happy Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Month. We're celebrating here at the Livermore Public Library with great programs such as today's event. And I'm Paul Sevilla, Adult Services Librarian at the Livermore Public Library, and so delighted to see you all today. We have a great program in store for you. But first, I want to thank the Friends of the Livermore Library for sponsoring today's program as part of the Authors and Arts series. I also want to thank our adult volunteer today, Renee. Thank you, Renee, for helping out.
Thank you, Renee.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, thank you to our special guests, Kulintang Dialect, and of course, author Conrad J. Benedicto. Yeah. So Conrad is here to talk about his book, the fantasy novel Musalaya's Gift. Did I pronounce that?
Yes, you did.
Musalaya's Gift, which is available to purchase and also to check out from the library. And there's some fantastic merchandise that our guests brought today. So make sure you check them out after the show. And also, and I'm sure Conrad will be talking about the traditional music instruments you're seeing here, Kulintang. And take it away, Conrad.
Thank you.
Dialect.
One more thing. Everybody in the bathrooms around here, and also this is a good time if you could silence your phones, but you're welcome
Thank
to take
you.
pictures.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Paul, Cynthia, and the Livermore Library for inviting me and us to this wonderful afternoon. We're honored to be here. Our teacher, the person that brought Kulintang, this music, to America, was actually laid to rest here in Livermore in the Five Pillars Cemetery, just 10 minutes away from here. So this is a very special place for us, and this is a very special event for me and all of our band members. Sorry, emotional. So just a little bit about my book. It's the Kulintang music is in the center of it, as well as fantasy and nature. And I'll speak more about it and read excerpts. Maybe you can ask me what kind of excerpts you would prefer, and then I'll see if I can find some action if you want action, or setting, or nature, scenery if you want scenery, and I'll find it. But this book was born of my desire to write a fantasy novel that I felt at home in, because even though I'm a big fantasy fan, oftentimes when I read about elves and kingdoms, even though I'm swept away by the adventure and I'm swept away by the story, I feel a little bit like an outsider. And so this is the book that I wanted to give to a young version of myself. That's why I'm here. So I'd like to read a quote from one of the last chapters from the book, and then play some music for you. This is from chapter 35, and it says, "Play," the old woman said. "Turn the welling you feel beneath your breast into a song." And the world exhaled the first song of itself. "Play more," the old man said. "Make it better, that I may close my eyes and dream to your souls." And the world turned the constant welling beneath its breast into countless melodies, the rhythms of root and fin, hoof and paw, feathers and scales, corals and colors and rain, of hearts and hands. "Play until the welling is done," the old woman said. "When you have breathed your last cycle, and the thing that is that melody has stopped ringing, I will wake up, and then I will tell you how this story goes." Old Lookout Folktale. Thank you. We'll start with Binali. Let's introduce the music to you all, since perhaps this is the first time you've been exposed to this. Kulintang is a indigenous music from the southern island of the Philippines, Mindanao, and there are many different groups in Mindanao that play this music. We mostly play Magindanaoan and Maranao music. And we'd like to introduce the instruments. This is a pre-colonial tradition, which means that it existed hundreds of years before Islam came to the Philippines, or before Christianity came to the Philippines. And so it is truly a tradition that is native to the people of the land. The first instrument is called a babandir or babandil. It is the Thai drum. Our second instrument here is called the gandingan, often referred to as the talking gongs, because you can send messages through them. The next one is the next one is the dabakan. It's a goblet drum. It's shaped like a goblet. And it's the only non-metal instrument of the ensemble, even though there are all wooden versions of all these instruments. Next are the agong, which provide the bass, the bass rhythm of the ensemble. Yes. Sometimes you play through. And this is the kulintang, the melody instrument, which bears the same name as the music. So this is a kulintang, and the music is called kulintang. And so that's usually like a simple pattern that a player will play just to check to see if the person arranged the gongs correctly. These are tuned to specific. The tuning is not Western, it's vaguely pentatonic, but it's different depending on what region it's from. And so this is a Magindanaoan tuning. And my teacher, Danonga Kalanduyan, who is a NEH, National Endowment of the Humanities Master Artist and a National Treasure. He's speaking it now, and so this is the
Could you play one each again?
one each again?
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So are you allowed for us to ask questions?
Yes.
After you talk.
Maybe we can leave some question and answer period, like in the last 15 minutes or so. Yes, absolutely. So if you would mind, I'll read a little excerpt from the book, and then maybe we can play another song for you. And maybe the excerpt I'll read is an excerpt that is where there's the music in it.
Could you read how it starts?
Sorry,
How the book starts?
how the book starts. You want to read the first, what would be the first page?
Well, maybe, or just the first few lines.
Sure, sure.
How you enter into this book.
So that's thank you. I love it when I have direction from the audience because it's so hard to pick which parts to read. It's hard to choose. Appropriately enough, the first chapter is titled "Boss Chief Musician." So when somebody's really, good at something, you call them boss chief. Where I'm from, and so this is chapter 1. It's called "Boss Chief Musician," and so. It goes, a muggy silence pressed down on Alan as he confronted, yet again, that maddening sense of desperately needing to remember something, even though it ranked lower than a chicken's rump on his list of things that mattered. He glanced furtively around the room of hunched-over students taking their tests, wondering why they were all dying of stupidity inside Mage Bruscora's steamy schoolhouse, while the rest of the village was outside, living. He could be sailing the bay on his father's outrigger, playing Kulintang above the waves, or climbing his favorite aratilis tree. The boy scratched his head. Rickety wooden benches squeaked as the rest of the sweaty youths fidgeted in their seats. Alad checked the front of the classroom warily, making sure to keep his head bowed. Mage Bruscoro sat there, his face hidden behind a faded black book. The boy risked a glance one row over to where his friend was dutifully writing down all the correct answers. Psst, Bembol! Ala's whisper seemed to echo across the room. His friend, Bembol, doggedly tried to stay on task, his big round eyes darting to their teacher each time Ala nagged. Bembol! Ala hissed loudly. Mage Bruscora's chair creaked. Bembol tried to look at Alan without raising his jackfruit-shaped head, but it was impossible. What? He snapped. Who is this Lord Ferdinand? Bembol rolled his eyes. Stupid Lord Ferdinand. You're the dumb one. Shut it. Will you just tell me, please? Did he kill Ibu? Put Kaptan in a cage? Huh? Is he McGuine's mate? Shh. None of that, Bembol spat. Do you want him to burn our tongues this time? Then tell me who this dogson is, Alan persisted. That dogson, Mage Bruscora's nasal voice interjected, was Ferdinand Bayulus, the Corsair lord who first discovered this jungle you call home. He wrinkled his nose. And brought enlightenment to your people. The mage emphasized his point with a stinging smack to Alan's left ear. Alan winced. Mage Bruscora swept the room with narrow gray eyes, his nose pointed accusingly like a hooked finger poking out of his face. All the frightened children quickly looked down at their desks, heads bowing like grass in the wind. Alan Dumagid and his sidekick, Bumbakal Saksi, have been cheating again, Bruscora announced with a self-satisfied smirk. You know what that means, don't you boys? The mage's gleeful eyes met Alan's. Mage Bruscora raised a bony finger as if to gently tap him on the forehead. Frightened squeals and whimpers erupted around the classroom. Alad bit his lip and tried to keep his eyes open as the withered hand drew closer. The blue veins curling around the knuckles seemed to swell. He would take your soul, Corsair reject. Alad cursed under his breath as the mage's fingertip began to glow. It's a fantasy novel, so there's magic and stuff like that. So we'll play another So, if you might have inferred, the mage probably hates Alan because he plays music. So we'll play more music. So who would like to? Gigi is gonna play. Thank you, Gingy. That was a powerhouse piece. Would you like more music or more reading? More audience directed?
Both.
Both. Okay, so I'll read another excerpt. So you got to meet the two boys, who are the main characters. Maybe we can read. Maybe you can meet some monsters. My favorite character is actually a crocodile, so let's do that one. So okay, so this is towards the end where one of my favorite characters, who's a crocodile, enters the story through a myth. Okay, so her name is Dabiana, which means old fatty in my language, a slang for that. So Dabiana was odd for a crocodile, and it wasn't just her size or longer than average legs. She was only 170 years old, but already she was as big as all the old-timers in the river. In those days, she was still mostly a predator, although she already had a taste for more exotic fare, and had already carried that fabled monkey across the river on her back. She hadn't yet swum throughout the entire archipelago for 1,000 years, quietly listening below bridges, prowling into darkened halls and palaces, exploring caves and lakes, mapping river systems, sniffing at mysterious mounds in the woods, climbing rugged peaks and eating all manner of folk and beast, while also learning of their ways and their secrets. She had not yet become extraordinary or earned her other names, but Big Fatty, as she was called, was already kooky enough to spy Amal Karandang walking by the river and decide to see for herself if stringy old men really did cause one to have indigestion. Daviana wiggled her body side to side and silently glided toward the riverbank, propelled by her enormously thick tail. Other than the ripples that spread out from the ridges on her back, only Daviana's bright emerald eyes were visible from the surface of the water. Amal, whose eyes had already begun to go bad, did not notice her presence despite nervously checking the river every now and then. Cleverly choosing her moment, the crocodile crawled up the riverbank with but the tiniest splash and quickly snuck up behind the old man. Without a second thought, she lunged. Her mighty jaws, roomy, jagged, and immaculate, Daviana detested having odd bits of flesh from previous meals lodged uncomfortably between her teeth, opened wide and snapped shut a split second later. Clang! Amal Karandang's Kulintang gongs fell through a huge gash in his rucksack and banged against each other as they hit the ground. Clang, clang, clang! Daviana shook her head. She had missed. At the last instant, her rear left foot slipped on the muddy bank, causing her to fall slightly short of her goal. Instead of the old man, she had bitten down on his rucksack, and it had contained something hard and metallic that now made her front teeth ache and her ears ring with noise. Amal, who had pitched forward onto the trail, raised himself up on his knees and looked back. There, just beyond the scattered Kulintang gongs, the most enormous, monstrous-looking crocodile he had ever seen swished its giant tail like an angry pussycat. Its green eyes were the size of guavas, and its teeth ran along its jaws like rows of sharpened spears. Its body was thicker than a full-grown carabao and twice as long. The fearsome reptile looked very annoyed, but slightly confused. Amal could think of only one thing to do in order to save his life. In a flash, he gathered and arranged his Kulintang gongs in front of him. Before the crocodile could blink, he began to play a slow and soothing melody, the kind he liked to hear before going to bed. He played as skillfully as he could, with plenty of artful and elaborate flourishes designed to mollify the beast. After a few long and harrowing minutes of music, he noticed, or imagined in his desperation, that the monster's annoyed frown had turned into a toothy grin. Its jaws were no longer at the ready, and in fact, its head had slowly come down to rest on the sparse line of grass in the middle of the riverside trail. By the time Amal had finished the third song, the crocodile was fast asleep. Amal almost fainted from relief when he realized that his desperate ploy had worked. I am so amazing. I am amazing, Amal Karandang crowed inside his head. He had accomplished a few improbable things with his music, but lulling the fattest, scaliest, black-clawed, green-eyed, fang-toothed crocodile in all of Atman out of sleep, now that was magic. He, Amal Karandang, could weave magic with his melodies, basically. As quietly as he could, he gathered all of his things and carefully placed them inside the folds of an extra malum he had shaped into a sack to replace his ruined bag. After a triumphant backward glance, Amal tiptoed away from the snoozing reptile. Thanks, please. By the way, these are malongs, and we have some traditional artists who are visiting us. And these are hand-woven, really exquisite, rare malongs that we said, hey, if there are people in Livermore who want to buy them, maybe you can help me sell them because they're selling them. They're usually $150 if you purchase them online, but they are being offered for $80 if you would like one.
Is that like a batik?
This is batik. This is batik, and this is just printed. This is inaul, which is hand woven. Yeah, these are all hand woven.
You know, the regular word for
Yeah. So, anyhow, and you may have noticed that Gingy was doing this with her hands. So that song is called Kasulampit, which is a song that mimics or honors the weaving motions that traditional weavers do. Yeah. So we'll play more if you would like. Okay, great. I think we still have time. What would you guys like to play? Would you like to?
should I ask?
Yes.
Would you like to dance? Yeah.
Could you play the opening of Battle Dance, kind of like the way we talked about in the book?
Yeah. The opening for Alexis?
Yeah.
And then do paddle dance?
Yeah.
Or you want,
Yeah.
you want to do paddle dance?
A little bit of the opening, and I'll come back to the drum.
Okay.
But then what's on you?
Well, into Battle Dance.
Oh, so you just want to freestyle? for
Freestyle
paddle.
too, yeah.
And then you want to do paddle dance?
Yeah, that
Yeah, sure. Okay. So Jai will do some movement for you while, and then he'll go back to the drum and we'll play this song called Paddle Dance for you. That's good. there's actually a song behind that, sorry, there's actually a story behind that song. We play mostly traditional music. Some of the music that we play are original compositions that are born here, right here on American soil, and based on our experiences here in America. And that song in particular was came about because there's a community in Sonoma that was building a canoe and was participating in the canoe gathering that Native American communities often have in the Northwest. And so the Filipino-American community in Sonoma wanted to participate. There are a few Filipino Americans there who are also Omo or Ohlone, and so they have both heritages, and it was really important to them to have an expression of both as they participated in this canoe gathering. And so as they were building their canoe, they wanted a dance to help express their respect for the tradition and also to bless the waters. And so they had there's this dance called the paddle dance. And this song was the song that basically they asked me to make for the paddle dance. So they had the paddle dance and they needed a song for it, so this was the song that I made. And there's a real strong connection because the rhythms that are used for the melody are from seafaring communities in the Philippines. So those are where those rhythms come from. Yes.
Can we ask questions?
Yes. Let's just do this freestyle and ask questions.
Who did the choreography of that? That was a very
Walang choreography po.
very exquisite dance
Thank you.
form. And did you choreograph that?
It's not choreographed po.
What?
Not choreographed po. It's a dance from the Tausug people in the Sulu archipelago of the Philippines, called Pangalay. And it has these curvilinear kind of motions. It's very slow, and the faster the music goes, the slower you go.
Oh. So it's just free movement, basically, depending on the music?
Yes and no. There are some rules, but a lot of it you'll see these really curved and bent postures. And there's a lot of hyperextension. So this motion that I was doing, it's called pataratawe, at least for the Tausug. There's also different families of dances around it, but this is like the bobbing of a boat on the waves. But it's really based on this hyperextension of your elbow.
We're not trying it out.
Is this dance in Mindanao?
Sa Mindanao po.
In Mindanao?
Yes, please.
Yeah. It seems like we see some Thai and Indian movement.
This is one of the dances
That- that's
and also musical
Southeast
tradition.
Asian.
There are definitely a lot of similarities between Southeast Asian communities, and we were just recently there, and Tawi-Tawi, where
Yeah.
Igal dancing is practiced, that's basically an hour away from Malaysia. So they were also doing like the latest style of dancing, and it was from Malaysia. So there are definitely a lot of connections, and
Thailand as well, I think.
yeah, and here's the batik, yeah. And yes, and while we were there, our guests were giving us gifts, and they were batik, from,
Yeah. And the accompaniment to that dance was just beautiful together.
oh, thank you. That was also just freestyle and not anything. Yeah. I think we have time for one more reading maybe and a couple more songs. And then maybe we'll have you guys ask questions. And then obviously I would love to sign any books if you would like to purchase them. We've got coloring books based on Kulintang, some different merchandise. This book was actually published by Cool Arts. It's a long-standing arts organization in San Francisco, led by an incredible matriarch named Alleluia Panis, and one of her board members, a friend of mine, gave her the manuscript, and she decided to publish it. And all of the incredible artwork that's in the book, I feel actually very lucky because it's an arts organization and they have artists. And so the book is beautiful. This is Nikila Badua's front cover. The maps are made by Raf Salazar and the iconography by another artist. And Raf Salazar actually was actually commissioned by Cool Arts to create a companion book in which he basically illustrated most of the main characters in the book. Yeah, and so all the main characters are illustrated, and it's really kind of neat to have him sort of talk to me about what each character looks like and get feedback from the community. One of which was that the hairs on the original portrayals were just too straight, and there was not a lot of wavy Filipina hair, and so he changed all that, and so now there's a lot more wavy Filipina hair. So I'll read one more excerpt. We'll play some more songs, and then maybe we can just freestyle it. Okay. Scary scenery. Any requests? Would you like scenery of the Philippines?
Yeah, scenery.
Descriptive words are beautiful.
More scary land?
I'd
Okay.
love to hear the scenery.
All right. There's one chapter that I really enjoyed writing because it was very much informed by my summers in this tiny island called Romblon. And let's see here. Oh, yes, okay. So this is from chapter 8, and chapter 8 is titled Leviathan. I'll read maybe a couple of pages. A ring of lofty coconut trees leaned over the shores of Daranglahi Cove like giants waiting to dive into the warm waters. Here and there, weathered basalt flows jutted out to meet the waves, partitioning the white sand beaches. Alad recalled how he spent days walking along the cove with Bembol and Hati. Hati is short for Luwalhati. She's the bossy cousin who leads them. When they were little. They picked guavas and mangoes, caught hermit crabs, jumped into the surf when it got too hot, pretended each new beach that appeared at the crest of an outcropping was another foreign kingdom to be explored. Once, they discovered an ancient Awican sea turtle shell that was so broad they could all fit underneath it and crawl along the sand, protected and unseen. After a fantastical afternoon of repulsing the Yuhan and monsters with the Pawikan's enchanted armor, they swam out as far as they dared, each buoying the shell with one hand. Right above the brightly colored corals, they let it go and swam back with wistful smiles as their ridged, dark green carapace silently sank down onto the reef. The young islanders were lost in their own memories as they lounged drowsily on the hull of Mang Bagani's gently bobbing fishing boat. The native outriggers were designed for speed and stability, consisting of sleekly tapered body and two long cylindrical floats made of bamboo culms. The floats were tied onto booms that lay across the deck. These booms curved downward so that the floats at the end could bob on the water surface. When the sail was stretched full against the mast along the path of a hardy wind, a bangka could glide as swiftly atop the waves as a seabird in full wing. The three sailors crisscrossed the cove all afternoon, harnessing the ocean breeze with such abandon that they almost capsized twice, even with Lualhati nimbly walking the booms out onto the floats to counter the tipping force of the wind with her weight. Alad loved watching the rainbow of colors whiz by underneath them as the bangka flew over the reefs. Whenever they reached the deep blue waters just beyond the mouth of the cove, he tried to follow the long rays of the sun with his eyes as far down into the mysterious depths as possible. They caught glimpses of sea turtles and dolphins, moving like echoes in the deep, and when they sailed fast enough, groups of flying fish would jump out of the water, extending their wing-like fins and gliding for a magical moment above the splash of the prow. It was an enchanting afternoon in the cove, one that had been lived by many generations of happy Luka children. Lualhati had finally let down the sail, allowing the boat to drift along the currents. The only sound was the splash of the bamboo floats bobbing in and out of the water. Snoozing on the deck with his foot dangling over the edge, Benbol noticed first a sudden chill, as if a shadow had been cast over them. But when he opened his eyes, the sky above was still sunny and clear. He propped himself up and looked beneath the boat. What he saw made him gasp. "Look down!" He turned and whispered urgently to the others. Alad and Lualhati raised their heads and glanced at Benbol. He crouched, still as a statue, clutching the gunwales with white knuckles. His head was between his hands as he peered over the edge down into the water. Alarmed, the cousins quickly copied their friend's position and peered into the blue. There, a silent shadow, twice as broad as the length of their boat, swam silently, perpendicular to the outrigger. It was a whale, heading out into the open Dilinginit Sea. Each exhaled several long breaths before the tail of the Leviathan finally glided past. Had the gargantuan swimmer reached the surface, while still beneath them, its back would have easily broken their flimsy wooden vessel. Thank you. So, maybe we'll play two last songs.
Can I have
Yes.
can you introduce?
Yes, absolutely. I was going to do that at the end, but now is also a great time. Yes, we love audience-directed workshops. My name is Conrad Benedicto. This is the awesome Jai Severson, the fiery Jean Jisai's son, the indomitable Monette Benitez, and the intrepid Michelle Liwanag. So they are the members of Kulintang Dialect. So I can play a song, or if you would like us to play a song, Jai, you can.
I'll play one of the what's that?
Sure. Okay. Jai is going to play a song, and what are you going to play, Jai?
For consistency's sake, I guess.
See ya? Okay. Okay, I'll knock out the thing for. Oh, go ahead. Sure.
It's gonna fall. Wait, that's fine.
Yes.
You mentioned the word song. Might it be possible that if a vocalist could sing along with the background percussive instruments?
Actually, I just learned this from Faisal, who was one of the master artists who visited us, who's visiting us, and he actually did mention that there is and there can be singing on top of the Kulintang. I did not learn it that way. My teacher, Danny Kalanduyan, gave me the impression that it was purely like musical and nobody ever sang over it. But it is a vast and complete cosmology, and so there's a lot of variations. And so when Faisal Monal told me that there was actually singing on top of it, I wasn't surprised. But unfortunately, unless somebody over here has tricked up their sleeve, we don't have any songs on top of the Kulintang that we can offer you today.
The ones I've learned are rituals, so they're not allowed to be performed.
Yeah. But we can offer you a final song. I can play, or if you want to play the gongo, you can, if you want to. Okay, so Jinji will play another song. It's called Takum. Yep, same. For more questions, if anybody would like to ask a question, and then we'll invite you to check out our wares and see if you'd like to purchase any. Does anybody have any questions?
How often do you
How often do we practice? Yes, that is very important. We practice once a week for 2 hours, from 7 to 9. And then sometimes, you know, when a song is particularly inspiring or difficult, some members will ask to have an extra time for us to work on stuff. So that's great.
How long have you been here?
This is our second year. So Kulintang, this is actually Kulintang Dialect 2.0. Because Kulintang Dialect 1.0, which is on Spotify, by the way, or Apple Music, or any of the platforms, Kulintang Dialect, you can check it out. All of my bandmates from Kulintang Dialect 1.0, they either moved to Hawaii or LA or started walking the earth like, like artists do. And I was fortunate enough to find these new bandmates who are so awesome. And we've been trying to, build our repertoire for the last 2 years.
So who is the composer, or you are?
Yes.
It's just that it's something, I'm from Luzon, so we hardly ever really get Kulintang music in the big island of the Philippines. So I wonder how much promotion there is. Yeah.
Kulintang is becoming more and more known throughout not just America, but the Philippines. I think it really caught fire here in the United States because Filipino Americans are very hungry for heritage. And this music is so inspiring because it is very, very distinctly Filipino. And so when, I thought you were raising your hand to say something. But I mean, if anybody wants to sort of address that question.
I was just going to add to that because pre-colonial, so this is truly indigenous music. So I think that's part of why, that it's, maybe it's not popular in the society. I don't want to make any sense. My family's from Luzon also. And so, I didn't know about Kulintang until I was older when I actually did a little bit more work to learn about our heritage, our indigenous heritage specifically. I think we also had a question over here.
You may have actually said this earlier, I came in late, but I wanted to ask what led all of you here today.
Oh, well, we were graciously invited by Paul Sevilla, who's in the back over there. I performed with Jai and another person, Ron Quesada, during a Filipino celebration in your Central Park here.
Yeah.
And
So that's where we
I
met.
met Paul, and we started talking, and I mentioned that I had a book published by Cool Arts in San Francisco, and one thing led to another, and here we are. Yes.
Why choose Kulintang?
Oh, definitely because for me, when I encountered Kulintang, it definitely spoke to me because, like we were saying, for many Filipino Americans, it's very compelling because we are hungry for our culture and we are hungry for something that we can sort of treasure as our own, because oftentimes, obviously, being in the United States, oftentimes our cultures are not as valued as mainstream culture. And so when we see this, we glom onto it. But I don't know if...
So these instruments, did you order it from the Philippines and export it over here?
That's happening more and more nowadays, for sure. With DHL and overseas shipping. So definitely, these instruments, I was fortunate enough to. Danny Kalanduyan left them to me. So, yeah.
So
Yes.
we wanted to follow you or come see you again. How do we
Oh,
we're
good.
Instagram and Kulintang Dialect.
Yeah, we're on Instagram.
On Instagram and Facebook.
We're on Instagram and Facebook. Kulintang Dialect.
That's where you'll see most of our new clips as well.
Okay.
And we had a question in the back of
Yes, your instruments, do they have a specific sound or tone to them that is different?
Oh, that matches the rest, you mean? Or?
Well, you say you get them from the Philippines,
Uh,
but do they have to be a specific sounding or tone?
Each community tunes their instruments the way they want. There's no standard tuning, there's no standard pentatonic scale. It's vaguely similar, but it's often referred to as micro-tuning, you know, or microtones, because it's in between. Often it's in between the do, re, mi. But I guess the one rule is that the space in between each gong does have to be consistent.
So each set will be tuned to itself and no other set.
Yes, although this one, I love this set because it's tuned the way I learned Kulintang, and there are sets, there's like 4 sets that are tuned like this.
Can you play one more, like an encore?
One more!
Yeah, one more! And also, can after your performance, can the kids go in, go near, maybe
Absolutely,
look at the
yes.
instruments closely?
Yeah.
Okay.
And one last thing too, if you guys really like this program and want them to come back, we have a questionnaire, and please check that you enjoyed it, and we can direct Paul to invite them back again next year. But thanks for coming to the Asian Pacific Islander Month celebration. I thought this was great.
Okay, so you want Benedicto again? Sure. Okay. This is an original tune. Binalig is the traditional song, and this is called Binalig San Francisco. The San Francisco version of it.
check out his book, Musamaya's Gift. And also thank you to Kulintang Dialect. And yeah, check out their instruments. Try them out. Learn about them.
What about Kulintang?
All right.